Can you explain to us just what the case centres on, what it's about?
So the case began way back in 2020 during Donald Trump's first term with the allegation that Facebook had illegally monopolized social media because it owned the then totally dominant blue Facebook app and had purchased Instagram and WhatsApp. And part of the problem with these antitrust cases in the U.S., we're 5 years later. The blue Facebook app is much less relevant, and there's this new thing called TikTok, which is a huge juggernaut, and to some degree challenges the idea that Meta is really all that dominant.
So, accused of illegally monopolising the social media market, Mark Zuckerberg has taken the stand. What's he had to say?
I mean, I think they're being their public statements and these statements on the stand, are very careful. But I think he's basically arguing that that Meta, among other things, that Meta made lots of purchases, lots of companies, some worked out, some didn't. There was no way for them to know that these companies would ultimately grow the way they did and constitute the kind of dominant position that, by the way, that they had in 2020 when the case was brought. And then he's also arguing, of course, that times have changed quite a bit.
So this is a big case, of course. Now, ahead of this, Meta had been lobbying Donald Trump. But that culminated in a visit from 3 people who are no friends of the company. Can you tell us who they were and what transpired at this meeting, this scoop that you got?
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the extraordinary things about this case is how brazenly Zuckerberg and Facebook have lobbied Trump. There's an belief that he is extremely transactional. And so Zuckerberg gave $1 million to his inauguration, settled a kind of nonsense lawsuit for $25 million more. And I think there was a sense in Washington that maybe Facebook had succeeded in essentially paying for this lawsuit to go away. Last week, the chairman of the FTC, which is bringing the suit, along with the top Justice Department lawyer, who's another antitrust figure, and a very aggressive activist named Mike Davis, a Trump supporter, came in and I think made the case to Trump that he should, that he should stay the course on this lawsuit. That Meta on the merits perhaps deserves to be broken up. But also Davis has in public repeatedly made the case that, that Mark Zuckerberg is basically Trump's enemy and that is a reason to go after him too.
And Ben, what's your understanding of the relationship between Donald Trump and Mark Zuckerberg?
It had been chilly, and I think, Trump accurately saw Zuckerberg as a Democrat who didn't support him. Zuckerberg seems to have gone through his own sort of political transformation and, like a lot of people in Silicon Valley, and moved to the right himself, grew his hair out, started going to mixed martial arts competitions, and then basically showered Trump in praise, gave him money. And there was a real sense, and Trump said this, that he kind of gotten to like Zuckerberg by this January or February. But also, he's not an idiot. And obviously a lot of these business figures have, come to say nice things about Trump because they're afraid of him.
And so, that deal or that settlement wasn't done. The case is before the courts. Tell us, how high are the stakes here?
Well, it's actually it's not totally clear, and it's a complicated case because it's a case saying that these acquisitions from a decade ago were inappropriate and ought to be unwound. It's not entirely clear what that would mean. I mean, if Instagram and WhatsApp were spun out into separate companies, shareholders in Meta would own those companies and would do great. And there's also a sense, I think, that this isn't actually the strongest case. I mean, Trump had a habit in his first term, and this may be part of that, of bringing basically kind of weak antitrust cases against his political enemies. But I think it is widely, I'd say most lawyers think this will fail in court. It also happens to be before a judge with whom Trump is in a very bitter fight over sending immigrants to South America.
And so, I mean, a difficult case to win, as you outlined there. Should the FTC win, though, would or could Donald Trump step in at that point?
No, I mean, I think if the courts rule that Meta has to be broken up and prescribe a remedy, or the remedy could be some much more complicated thing in which elements of their data have to be made available to their competitors, parts of their advertising platform would be split off. It's unclear exactly how you would break this thing up. No, I think they would have to do it and would comply with the courts. And again, I mean, it might not be the worst thing in the world for shareholders to own these three different companies. Although it is hard to remember this moment not that long ago when the blue Facebook app was seen as a monopoly on social media.